So we are live now. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone. Great to have you in our YouTube stream. And we continue the SAP Cloud Lifecycle Management webcast series. Today, we will talk about Intelligent Scenario Lifecycl Management, ISLM. It offers end-to-end machine learning ops support to build intelligent applications of various types. Our expert speakers for today are Preeti Dhingra, who is Director Product Management, and Abhishek Mishra, who is Product Owner. Both are part of the Cloud and Lifecycle Management team at SAP. My name is Larissa Brinkman from the SAP Global User Groups organization, and I'm your host for today. We kindly ask you to place your questions in the live chat, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. The replay of this session will be available under the same link immediately after the session. With this, I wish you great interaction and kindly ask Preeti to take over.
Larissa. So thank you for having us today, and we're delighted to speak about ISLM and how it helps in building, integrating, and consuming intelligent applications. So I'll try to bring up my screen here.
Yes, please.
Do you see my screen?
1 second. Yes, I can see your screen. Please go ahead, go in the present. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right. So as I mentioned, we are here to talk about Intelligent Scenario Lifecycl Management and the entire process around building, integrating, and consuming intelligent applications using ISLM. So in today's session, we will be talking about a little bit about the roadmap. We will give you a glimpse of upcoming functionalities, and those are subject to change. So please bear that in mind. The agenda for today is we will start with the overall AI technology portfolio. Briefly, we will take a look at it. Then we will talk about the motivation behind ISLM as a solution. Then we'll dive deeper into the ISLM details, such as what are the key features, key benefits which ISLM offers. And we have a very interesting demo planned for today's session, and we'll wrap it up with Q&A and further information. So before we talk about the Intelligent Scenario Lifecycl Management, let us take a brief look at SAP's key technologies in the area of AI. So for today's session, we will not be getting into the details of each of these technologies, but just to understand where ISLM fits into this big picture here. So as we see, SAP offers a comprehensive AI portfolio, and ISLM is part of the S/4HANA stack that we can see up here. So as we extend our AI portfolio, with that, what we also need is a standardized enterprise-ready approach for underlying framework, which enables easy adoption of ML capabilities. And ISLM is a solution in that direction. So what is the problem space that we're trying to address here? For any customer to start with their ML journey or their AI journey, typically the first step would be to understand what is out of the box available by SAP for them to consume readily. Once you've identified an intelligent scenario or a machine learning scenario which caters to your business need, then the next step for a customer or the business admin in that case would be to understand if the system or the environment meets the prerequisite to run these kind of ML scenarios. Once you have identified the scenario, the prerequisites are meeting, you would want to start with the training of the scenarios. So this is where also some of the challenges lie for our customers. And once you have all of this is running in your productive environment, a customer would like to have a better control during the productive usage. So these are some typical challenges or typical hurdles that a customer has to face while ML adoption and while also running ML scenarios in the productive environment. So before we dive into the details of ISLM, we just wanted to talk about motivation, scope, and goal of ISLM. So ISLM is a standardized framework, and it is intended to support end-to-end lifecycle management of machine learning scenarios. So on one hand, ISLM supports our internal teams, our internal application developers to create and publish these out-of-the-box scenarios, and also enables our customers and partners to operate and manage intelligent scenarios. Typically, for any intelligent solution, the underlying model that you see here with an example needs to be trained, retrained with the customer data as ML models learn from the historical data. Our goal is to provide a solution which caters to all these phases, right from discovery and setup to preparation, training, deployment, and so on, and the actual productive usage end to end. So what is the goal of ISLM? With ISLM, we offer a harmonized cockpit to support ML scenarios based on different platforms or approaches. So what we see here are, on a broad level, two different flavors of machine learning, or two different approaches of machine learning. The first one is the embedded approach, which has been available for our customers for a while. An example of this is S4 HANA ML libraries. So in this case, the application being S4HANA and your ML provider, which are the HANA APL and PAL libraries, are all running in the same stack. So this is used for simpler use cases for forecasting, trending, classification, and so on. And these are the cases which does not require a lot of memory or additional hardware in this case. The second flavor, as we see here on the right-hand side here, this is the remote machine learning way of achieving the machine learning or embedding the machine learning into your business application. In this case, the application, which is S4HANA, is running on a different stack compared to the ML provider. So example of this would be SAP Data Intelligence or the ML services which are available on SAP BTP platform. And this flavor or this approach is more suitable for the high-end use cases where we have more complex scenarios such as image recognition or sentimental analysis or deep learning for natural learning processing and so on. So these are two different flavors and both are supported within ISLM. With ISLM, our objective is to make the adoption and the usage of AI much easier for our customers. So a customer might start with a typical AI journey by adopting SAP delivered scenarios, out of the box scenarios, and they might want to go for the instant business value. Or you may choose to extend your application by reusing some of the SAP provided services. An example of this would be SAP AI business services, which are available for our customers on BTP. Or you could create your own content. An example of that would be the ML models and the AI content created using SAP Data Intelligence or SAP AI Core. So these are a few examples of custom developed scenario. So based on your business need, based on what you want to achieve, whatever path you may choose, ISLM is the one-stop framework for all the solutions. So whatever approach or whatever platform you may choose. Okay, so what are the key advantages of using ISLM? And as I have iterated that in the session so far, that our objective is to make the adoption of the AI much easier for our customers and also for our internal teams. So by providing them a standardized and a unified lifecycle management framework, ISLM runs in the context of business application and it is intended for non-ML experts. So for example, if you've created an ML artifact and you would like to integrate that into your business application. So instead of writing thousands of lines of code, huge amount of code, you could simply use ISLM and the delivered consumption model. You could use the ABAP APIs or the CDS views and the different approaches that I just mentioned and integrate your ML artifact into your business application with much more ease. And once you have integrated into it, integrated your ML scenario into the business application, the next step would be to run the operations around it. And whatever platform, whatever approach you may have chosen, you can run the entire operation steps within the S/4HANA stack. So you can completely avoid the complexity of using multiple tools across different stacks. So that's another big advantage of ISLM. With ISLM, we offer customers a great advantage of using a step called activation. So this basically gives a better control to our customers during the productive usage. So what this essentially means is that you have to explicitly activate a model that you would like to consume in your business application. And lastly, here I'm talking about the inference consumption. And as I mentioned, ISLM is offering common consumption model through ABAP APIs and the CDS views, which can be used with a very minimal coding approach. So these are some advantages. Now, let's take a look at what ISLM is. So it is a single entry point within S/4HANA stack to efficiently integrate and operate ML scenarios. And up here, we can see the 3 Fiori apps, very powerful apps that comes with ISLM. So the Intelligent Scenarios app, which is basically for creation, you could view out of the box delivered scenarios in this application, and you could drill down to a lot of details, which we will see in the demo as well. And the second app, the Intelligent Scenario Management app, is basically the Ops app using which you can train, activate, deploy, and so on. It is a standardized framework and it is delivered with SAP basis and it's part of the S/4HANA license. So what that means is that you can benefit from all the features of ISLM instantly without having to install anything different or having to buy any additional licenses. Our focus with ISLM is to offer customers to manage these use cases. So you could manage both custom developed as well as SAP delivered or out of the box scenarios using ISLM. ISLM is the successor of the PI framework. So what this means is that with ISLM, we are providing all the capabilities of PI, but as you can see, the scope of ISLM is much more broad. We are offering different scenario types. We are supporting different technologies and platform within ISLM. The key benefits of ISLM, we will also try to highlight this during the demo, but just to give you some idea that, as I mentioned, it simplifies the integration of ML capabilities into business application, and we offer the low-code approach with ISLM. With ISLM, we are offering end-to-end lifecycle operations. So in the context of the business application, so we offer tight integration with the business application. You can start right from creation. So we support certain scenario types which you can create, or you could explore and discover SAP delivered scenarios within ISLM, run the prerequisite checks, do the training, then deploy and activate, and then use it productively. So these are some of the steps or some of the phases that we support in ISLM. And another point that I wanted to highlight that with ISLM, we support auditing requirement and it simplifies the change management process with the explicit activation step of the model. Now, I spoke about certain problem statements, and let's take a look at how it is supported in ISLM, just to give you an idea about what kind of features do we offer. So first one being that how can I get started with SAP delivered ML scenarios? So in ISLM, we have a capability called additional information, which basically allows you to, first of all, you can look up any kind of scenario in ISLM. You could search scenarios based on the different lines of businesses. So in case if you're only interested in finance or sales, you could just filter it based on the LOB. And once you have once you found the scenario that you would like to utilize, then you can drill down to further details. For example, you can see the scope item associated with a certain scenario. You can see the Fiori app ID and help documentation and so on. So this provides you all the information that you need to get started with a scenario. Now, once you've identified a scenario, next step for you is to identify the prerequisite or to check if the prerequisites are meeting. So we offer prerequisite checks, which basically allows you to run these readiness checks, which allows you to assess whether a scenario will specifically work in your environment. So basically it will check whether you have the quality of the data that is required, quantity of data that is required, whether the technical configurations are in place, and so on. Now, the triggering of the monitoring and the training part. So this is basically a screenshot of the application intelligence scenario management. So what you can see here is how ISLM allows you to perform all these steps with a lot of ease. And as I mentioned, activation, which is a very critical step in the entire process, is also supported in ISLM. And using this, customers have a better control over the productive usage of a model. So with ISLM, our objective is to support not only the diverse use cases, but also ML scenarios based on different platforms, technologies, and also different algorithms. And we are constantly extending the support in that direction. So we started with the support for HANA ML based scenarios. So basically PAL and APL based scenarios. Then we extended the support to SAP Data Intelligence. We have other BTP-based services scenarios supported, for example, ICR, which is intercompany reconciliation, and this is an app-specific BTP service. So these scenarios are also supported. We support AI business services-based scenarios such as DOCS, which is document information extraction, BER, the business entity recognition, and DAR, and so on. So these scenarios are supported. So some of these scenarios are extended to, are only supported internally for custom creation part, but we are also extending the supports. For example, SAP AI Core is currently available internally for our internal developers to create scenarios and publish it, but we're also working towards making it available for our customers. And lastly, I wanted to highlight that we're also working towards supporting the third-party ML platform that you can see up here. So for example, the ML in Google AI or Azure or other hyperscalers. So this is also part of the roadmap. Now, let's talk about a concept called intelligent scenario, which I have been talking about so far. So this is basically an entity, and in ISLM framework, we basically work on an entity called intelligent scenario. An intelligent scenario is the binding entity between the consuming business application and the ML artifact. So here we have taken the example of an ML service which is running on BTP, and then we have the intelligence scenario as part of the ISLM framework, and then we have the business application here. So for each of the business use case, we need a corresponding intelligence scenario, and every intelligence scenario is based on a certain intelligence scenario type. So a few examples of the intelligence scenario types are the HANA ML based scenarios, the SAP DI, or the BTP based services, BER, ICR, DOCS, and so on. An intelligence scenario, as I mentioned, binds the business application to the consuming ML service in BTP. And each intelligence scenario has a prediction class associated with it, and which basically defines its behaviors. For example, what will be the inference type, whether it will be online or whether it will be a batch inference call. Okay, up here, we can see a few examples of intelligence scenarios based on different services. So with ISLM, ICR or intercompany reconciliation is supported. This is a well-known scenario, and it basically provides ML capabilities in matching intercompany transactions. And this helps in the intercompany document matching and reconciliation process is much more accelerated and faster with the help of machine learning. So here, ISLM enables easy integration of BTP-based app-specific service here. And so ICR is a service which supports batch inference, and it deals with a huge amount of data, of course. So here, ISLM supports in easy integration by polling the inference consumption and inference execution, and it downloads the results and then also notifies the application once the results are available. And all of this is achieved with ABAP APIs, which are provided by ISLM. The other example that we see here is the sales order auto extraction intelligence scenario. So this is based on the AI business service docs. So this is also delivered through ISLM. And so sales order auto Sales order automation is a scenario which basically helps you to create sales orders based on an unstructured data. For example, the PDFs or images and so on. So these are a few examples of intelligent scenarios which are available in ISLM. So a few examples of out-of-the-box intelligence scenarios. So in the interest of time, I will skip going over these, but this is more for your reference. Okay, with this, we come to the overall process which is involved in delivering and consuming ML scenarios with ISLM. So before we dive into the demo, it would be a good idea to just take a look at the overall process a little bit. So typically for a customer, they start with the initial AI artifact development where their data scientists or their AI developers develop the AI content. And in this phase, SAP provided tools can be used which are intended for AI developers or data scientists. Now, once the ML technology and algorithms are identified, in the next phase, ISLM becomes the framework to integrate, operate, and manage ML artifact consumed by the business application. For SAP delivered scenario or custom created scenario, both are supported. And in the intelligent scenario app, both type of scenarios can be found and worked upon. Now, the second phase, which is the discovery and the evaluation phase. So this is where ISLM offers extensive capabilities. So as we saw in the previous slides, we have capabilities around which customers can easily explore the scenarios which are available. For example, if you want to look up the Fiori app IDs associated or the scope item and so on, if you want to look up the search, the help documentation, all of that is very easily possible in ISLM. Then the question comes whether the scenario will run successfully or not, how to check that. So prerequisite checks, it's a very powerful functionality, and ISLM is the only tool, only framework which is supporting this functionality, which allows customers to run these kind of checks to see whether a scenario will run in your S/4HANA system or not. Now, once all of these steps are over, then the next step would be to the technical configuration part of it. So here we've taken example of BTP-based services. So in case of a BTP-based service, you would have to create service instance and the key in the BTP, and then you would have to maintain connection for the intelligence scenario to connect to the SAP BTP service. Then comes the operations part in ISLM, and this is where the entire breadth of functionality is supported. Using the Intelligent Scenario Management app, you can train the ML model with your data, and you can analyze the quality, you can analyze the results, all the metrics, and the quality are very clearly indicated in the app. And once you're satisfied, then you can deploy and activate a trained model to be used in the business application. So these are basically the steps involved in the entire process of delivering and consuming an ML scenario with ISLM. And with this, I'd like to now hand it over to Abhishek to take us through the demo.
Thanks, Preeti. I'll share my screen. Yeah, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Fine. So let's start with the first SAP delivered use case and see what is the value which ISLM is adding here. So the use case that we are talking about is basically around the behavioral insights area. It's the risk of late payment and clustering use case. So many organizations generally have high rate of uncollected revenue and potential write-off. And there is a high cost of debt recovery. And this is an ML use case which has been offered by SAP in the area of behavioral insights, where the ML use case will predict the risk that the customers will not pay the invoices on time. This is the late payment use case. And then there's another use case around clustering delivered by the same area, where these business partners who will not pay on time are clustered into different groups so that the debt manager could analyze the group and take the corrective action. So let's get started with this use case and see how a business administrator on a customer side could leverage the benefit out of it. So we are in the S/4HANA system, the app system. And here we have the 3 Fury apps for ISLM. The first is the Intelligent Scenarios app. And this app, as Priti mentioned, is basically the Fury app, which helps you to act as a single entry point to explore the SAP delivered intelligent scenarios or the ML use cases. So let's get into this app. So these are the different intelligent scenarios which are delivered by SAP to the customer, also known as out-of-box shift scenarios. And these are around different lines of business. And the use case I was talking about is the BI late payment of the BI late payment clustering use case. There are other use cases around finance, the supply chain, sourcing and procurement, and so on and so forth. In the initial exploration, the business administrator could also filter on a specific LOB if they're interested in a specific LOB use case, for example, on service, sales, maybe sourcing and procurement, to name a few. And once they are filtered, they could see the use case. The biggest problem statement which lies now is, fine, SAP has delivered me a lot of ML use case with which we can get instant benefit. But how do we get started with this use case? Where is the information to help me know that how to train the ML model, how to deploy it, what kind of data is required to train, uh, which kind of business configurations needs to be activated to work on my ML use case, in which Fury apps the prediction results will be shown from the trained model. And this part of the problem is solved by ISLM via this additional information. So let's take a behavioral insights late payment clustering use case. And when we click on this use case, we could see the SAP Fury ID, in which the predictions from the trained model will be shown, and the help center documentation link, which helps you to get started with the different use cases around the behavioral insights area. So let's click on the show details page. We can see the line of business, the Fury app ID, the business benefit which the scenario offers, and the most relevant information, as we mentioned earlier, is the help center documentation link. This is where you will find most of the relevant information to get started with the SAP delivered ML use case. The next part of the problem which ISLM tries to solve here, whether it's a SAP delivered use case or whether it's a custom creation use case, is we offer both the flavors. The customers could also build their own custom ML content. If they have their own custom scenario, using the create button, they could create a HANA ML based use case based on both HANA provided libraries like APL and PAL. And here, the major part of the problem, when the data science evaluations have been done, the libraries have been decided, the algorithms, ML algorithms have been decided, is how to easily integrate the ML capabilities into a business application with a low-code approach. Is there any generic framework available which could take care of all the complexity of calling the HANA ML libraries and doing the entire orchestration? So this is where the ISLM is a single point where you could create your own custom intelligent scenarios. And let's see, with this use case of late payment clustering, how easy it would be to create a scenario. So to create an intelligent scenario, what is required is 2 CDS views. One is the training CDS view, which has the historical data to train the ML model, and one is the apply CDS view. And this is the CDS view on which the inference results, or the open items on which the prediction results from the trained model has to be applied. Once these CDS views are applied, the next step would be to basically, ISLM will automatically determine what is the input for that should go to train the model. And you have to also specify the target that you want to predict from the model. And on publishing this scenario, what ISLM generates is a CDS view and also certain AMDP classes. And where these CDS views, you can get the predictions from a trained model, and these predictions can then be integrated and shown in your business application. So the entire aspect of the problem statement that we are trying to solve here is the simplified integration with a low-code approach. The second phase, also in the discovery and exploration part, is SAP has delivered a lot of ML scenarios across different lines of business. Which ML scenarios can work in my system? This is the biggest problem which the business administrator on the customer side thinks about. Does my system meet the readiness requirement to work on the SAP delivered use case? Do I have sufficient data to train the model? Is my data distribution proper? Is my data skewed, or is my data distributed properly so that I get a good quality of model? Have I activated all the required business configuration to work on an ML use case? To do that, ISLM also offers the flexibility of prerequisite check capability, where for the SAP delivered ML scenarios or the intelligent scenarios, business administrator could go to the intelligent scenario management app where you can perform the ML operations as well as the prerequisite checks. So let's take the late payment clustering use case, and here you can click on the prerequisite check button, and then the business administrator will go to the second step, and they see that for this SAP delivered ML use case around the late payment clustering, there are two prerequisite checks delivered. One is a data quantity check to see whether sufficient data exists to train the ML model and whether the required business configurations are active. The important part also of the prerequisite check is it avoids a lot of customers' frustration because you can, before starting the ML operations, these prerequisites could be performed, and if the results are successful, then the ML operations can proceed so that the training is successful and it leads to a good quality of model. So we go to the third step, and there's no parameters associated with the checks, and then the prerequisite check would be triggered by a business admin here. When the checks are triggered, we can monitor the check runs in the prerequisite check runs tab, and you can see that there are two checks that were triggered. Both of them were successful. Some administrative information, and also we could see that which checks were triggered and which were successful. For more information, you can go inside the details page to see that the data quantity was successful. This is the clustering use case. So minimum 5 clusters are expected to train the model. But yeah, the actual system has more than that clusters. So yeah, this sufficient data is there to train the model, and the business configuration is active. The business configuration that is required for this use case is an IMG activity for the behavioral insight, where the 4 use cases around the late payment, late filing, and the clustering could be activated using a maintain scenario IMG activity. So we have the BI receivership payment and filing, which has been active, and the late payment also has been activated for a clustering use case as well. So the required business configurations are also active, and that's why the prerequisites were successful. So once the business administrators have evaluated the prerequisite checks, the next part is ML operations, right? The ML operations also means that there's a centralized or a standardized and harmonized framework which is required to do the entire ML operations from an S/4HANA ABAP stack. Instead of switching the stacks, going to different layers and using different tools, there's always a need to do the entire ML operations in a seamless, easy manner from an S/4HANA stack itself, and that's where ISLM also plays a role. The first step would be definitely to train the model, and in the training stage, business administrator could also see the range of data on which the training will be done. They could further filter the data based on the input fields or the specific value of the input field. And once the training is done, the trained model or the model version will be created. And the most important aspect here would be to decide for a business administrator. So there are multiple trained models. Now, which one should return predictions in the business application out of all these trained models? So there's a control which is required over a productive usage, and that part of the problem is also solved via ISLM with the step of activation, where a business administrator could analyze the quality of the model and then take a precise call out of multiple trained models, which one should be activated based on the model metrics and other quality information. So we could also see some of the late payment use cases here, and for the late payment use case, you can also see certain quality information here, like the 5-star quality star indicator, the different model matrix which could be analyzed to measure the quality and get started with this ML use case. So for example, predictive power, the prediction confidence, the area under curve, the key influencers, which field contributed maximum in the training process, and also some of the performance metrics. So with this, the train model metrics can be analyzed, and then the activation could be decided by a business administrator. Apart from the manual training, what we also support is the kind of scheduling of a training where there's a need to automatically create the training runs based on certain desired frequency and intervals. So a business administrator could also click on a create schedule button here, select one of the reference model versions which has already been trained, and go to the next steps to basically define the frequency, the interval, And then, so we could define the different frequencies and the intervals which are required. And then a schedule can be created, and schedule could be created, and then the trainings will be created in the system instead of a manual run that was done earlier. So once this late payment clustering use case has been trained and the trained model is created and it has also been activated for productive use, the next step definitely for something like a business administrator or here the business user on the customer side would be to analyze that which are the different clusters which are there and which are the different customer groups which will basically have the risk of late payments, and then a different kind of a corrective action can be taken for each of the groups. Okay. So this is so these are the different customer groups which are represented by a bubble here, and the business user could click here, see the average due amount, average months since registrations, what is the total debt amount, the number of customers in each cluster, and then for each cluster, a different kind of a corrective action could be planned. For example, if the debt amount is very high or it's always delayed, some certain kind of campaigns could be launched. So those aspects could be easily taken care here. So the personas that we are talking here is of the type debt manager, and maybe for the other groups also, the behavior could be different, and based on the behavior and the top grouping indicators, the corrective action could be planned by the debt manager. This is around how an HANA ML kind of a use case could be either custom created, or if SAP delivers, what it means for a business administrator on the customer side to train a model, activate it, and then go to the business application to see the prediction results. Let's also talk about a side-by-side use case and see how ISLM is trying to simplify the entire integrations, the standardized ML operations, the activation, as well as the consumption of inference results in a business application with a low-code approach. So let's move to the second use case. The second use case that we are talking here is basically automating the prediction of a potential supplier for a free text purchase requisition. So here the data science aspects were done, and what came out was the data attribute recommendation as an AI business service, the best fit, because it automates creation, maintenance, and management of structured data. And here a classification algorithm from data attribute recommendation is used to solve this business specific problem. And then once the data science evaluations have been done, the starting step in ISLM would be basically to create an intelligent scenario based on the data attribute recommendation service as a binding entity, and then to create the setup part, that means to create a connection of the intelligent scenario to connect it to the DAR service instance, and using the management app and end-to-end ML operations, starting from the training the model, deploying it, activating it for productive usage could be done. And the last part definitely would be how the prediction results could be consumed in a business application from the trained, deployed, and activated model with a low-code approach using ISLM provided ABAP API. The business value which this scenario definitely offers is that, yeah, it avoids the repetitive tasks, the speed up, the processing time is less, the accuracy is more, and yeah, the predicting the potential suppliers automatically definitely is an added value. Now let's see how a side-by-side use case is supported. So we are in the S4HANA development system, and let's see the use case around the custom creation for side-by-side. So for side-by-side, as Priti mentioned earlier, there are different flavors which are supported. So we started with SAP Data Intelligence, and then as a platform, we have support for AI business services like document information extraction, app-specific services like ICR, tailored for specific areas like financial. We have, again, AI business service like business entity recognition, AI business service, data attribute recommendation, and also platforms like AI Core. AI Core for custom creation will be offered to customers and partners in our upcoming releases. So to create a scenario, what exactly is required is the concept of the prediction class where certain behaviors could be defined. So this is one of the scenario which is talking about for proposing the supplier for a free text purchase requisition, where data attribute recommendation is used. And let's see how the prediction class needs to be created in the ABAP system. So we go to the S4HANA ABAP system, and we have opened this prediction class. So this prediction class needs to define an ISLM provided ABAP interface. So there's an interface for DAR, and there are certain methods which an ABAP developers would need to implement. One such method would be what is the type of inference, whether it's an online inference or a batch inference. So DAR supports online inference. So the type of inference will be online. And the other part would be DAR has support for different templates, ML templates. It has a classification template, there's a regression template, there's an auto ML template, there's a deep learning template, also maybe solution blueprint template. So a web developer or the developer of the ML use case here could decide which template of DAR fits into their use case and configure it accordingly. So here for this scenario, we have used a generic template from DAR to proceed ahead with the scenario. Apart from that, we also provide some kind of an extension possibility where before the training and the inference, some kind of a custom logic could be implemented to pre-populate the parameters and artifacts that are required for training and batch inference processing. Once this class is created and the scenario is created using this class and it is published, the scenario creation part is done. The next step definitely would be to go to the BTP to set up the connections for this intelligent scenario. So the customers have to go to their own BTP account, and from their sub account, they need to create provision for the DAR service, and then create a service instance and a service key for DAR. So the service key, if you see, it looks something like this, where we have the client ID, the client secret, which is the username and password, the API URL, and then definitely the authentication URL. So once the service key is obtained, then a technical administrator on the S4 side could go to the ABAP system and to the IMG activity provided by ISLM to maintain connection for an intelligent scenario. So we have already maintained the connection here. So let's go to the data attribute recommendation use case. And for this scenario, this is a scenario, and what is required to maintain the connection is the RFC destination where the API URL goes, and then we have the client profile where the scopes are defined, and then we have the client config, whether the client ID, the client secret, the authentication and token endpoint will be defined. And once the intelligent scenario, with this step, the intelligent scenario will be connected to the DART service instance, and a connection check could also be performed. And once the connection is successful, it's ready, then the ML ops can be started now. So for starting the ML ops, we go to the Intelligent Scenario Management app. And the way the side-by-side scenario or the embedded scenario works is typically the same. You'll not find a different look and feel. It will be overall the same, so that the trainings can be triggered. Here, the parameters and the data sets we have pre-populated using the custom extension implementation. And once the train model is created, the next step definitely for the business administrator would be to analyze the quality of the model. So we have trained a model, and let's see how the quality information or the model metrics looks like. So we see the list of parameters and the artifacts that were used for the training process. We also have certain debrief information like accuracy, the F1 score, the precision, recall, the different ML metrics which DAR returns is also shown in ISLM, and the higher the value, the better. So based on the model metrics, then a business administrator could decide on to deploy this model, and in the deployment step also, ISLM is intelligent enough to pick up the trained model automatically, which should be deployed up. And once the deployment is done, definitely the most important aspect will be to activate it. And here, for side-by-side use cases, we have two types of activation. One is activation for all the users in the system, and one is activation only for a logged in user or for me. So logged in user activation basically means it's a kind of a local activation to test the model before rolling it out to all the users in the system. So both the phases are also supported, or both the types of flavors of activations are supported. And once the control over the productive usage using the activate step is done by the business administrator, definitely to solve the problem of consumption of predictions from the trained, deployed and activated model, ISLM provides a simple ABAP APIs where ISLM returns the authenticated HTTP client, and then the input, the request to the model can be given in a JSON format, and ISLM will get the response from the trained DAR model and return the response in a JSON format, which could be then integrated into a business application with a very low code approach. So we also have a report just for testing purpose. So let's trigger the inference and see how that works. So I have given the scenario name, and this is the input to the trained model, a JSON format for DAR, and this report is just for a testing purpose. But yeah, so maybe the service is down now, so it's not working. But yeah, you will get a response back in the JSON format when the training and other things are done. So with this, I am done with the demo, and we can move to the further information. Preeti, over to you.
Thanks, Abhishek. So over here, you can find links to several webinars and sessions and also the blogs that we have published. I would highly recommend to look up the ISLM SAP community topic page because that's the one-stop shop for all the information that you need. Also, do join us for ISLM sessions. So we have 2 sessions planned. We have a lecture session, and also we are part of the usability testing program this year at TechEd. So yeah, with that, we can conclude, and over to you, Larissa.
Thank you very much, Preeti and Abhishek. A very nice presentation and great demo. And I can't see questions in the chat yet, but probably the participants might think of the questions. And I would like to start with a question that comes up actually very often. And I would like to know, for example, in a typical machine learning project, when should we use ISLM and which personas should use ISLM? Maybe you can give a bit information on that.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, let me start with, which is often a question that comes to us. So ISLM is a tool, but this is not positioned for AI development per se. So this is not an AI development tool. So it's not for AI developers or data scientists. So once the AI development or AI artifact is developed, then the ISLM comes into picture. And ISLM is, as I mentioned, it's tagged into S/4HANA, and this is the right tool for the application developers to integrate the ML artifact into S/4HANA. And Abhishek spoke about the low-code approach. This is one of the key advantages that we offer with ISLM. So application developers or at customer side, customers, when they create their own custom AI content and they want to integrate that with the business application, then ISLM comes into picture with respect to the integration part of it. And once the scenario is available and you want to train and you want to then deploy and activate and so on, then ISLM is the right tool to perform all those ML operations on the model. Yeah, so that's what I would say about this question.
Thank you very much. We are almost at the end of our presentation, but I would like to ask one more question. Could you tell us what type of scenarios are supported for custom creation in ISLM?
Yeah, so I'd like to take this question. So for HANA ML based scenario, that is embedded machine learning scenarios based on HANA ML, we have support for both APL and the PI libraries in on-premise and APL in cloud for custom creation. And for side-by-side front, we started with SAP Data Intelligence and for custom creation, and now we also support the business entity recognition, the data attribute recommendation as well for custom creation. And our future roadmap is also to provide a support for custom creation based on AI code as well in future.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't see additional questions in the chat. I think the presentation was very good, and of course the participants and the viewers of this session could use the replay for their on-demand consumption and learn more. I will also place the materials, the PDF that you have just presented, connected to this replay. So you will also get a link to the materials of this session, and you also have all the additional sources for more information and the contact details of Preeti and Abhishek. With this, thank you very much for the presentation, for the demo. Thank you to all the viewers of this session. Oh, I do have question in the chat. Could you please tell us more on two types of CDS views being used for ISLM?
Yeah, to create your own custom scenarios based on the HANA ML, APL, and PAL, you require two CDS view. The first CDS view is a training CDS view, which basically has the historical data to train the machine learning model. And once the model is trained via the ISLM management app, in the management app, you could also see different filters, the inputs, the keys, and the targets, which also comes from this training CDS view. So when the model has been trained and activated, ISLM generates another CDS view, which is there for consumption. And the second CDS view that we were talking about is the apply CDS view. And this is a CDS view which contains the open items or the records on which the predictions from the trained model has to be applied on. So it could be, yeah, maybe open purchase order items for which you want to predict whether the delivery will be on time, early or late. So these are the open items or the purchase order items on which you want to apply the prediction results. So this data is basically a part of the apply CDS view. Both of them could be same as well. The training and apply CDS view could be same, but yeah, the developer or the creation of the use case could make a use case specific decision where they would like to go with the same CDS or a different one.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So now the last ask for the questions. We are almost at the end of the session. I allow a few more seconds for participants to type their questions, but I can't see. So with this, again, thank you very much to all the viewers of this session. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Abhishek. And as I've already indicated, the materials of the session will be available together with the reply in the description of this session. With this, again, thank you very much for your attention, and we are looking forward to welcome you in one of our upcoming sessions. With this, I wish you a great day. Thank you and bye-bye.